Welcome to You've Been Owned, the cybersecurity podcast where we talk about all things security incidents, what we can learn from them, and what went wrong. My name is Gary Perkins. I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Information Security Officer at CISO Global, the company that can provide the full range of cybersecurity solutions. Now, I'm joined here today by Joseph Hall, and I am so excited. He is principal threat researcher at Infoblox, has been doing this forever, and is got to be the best dressed guy in cyber. Hey, Joseph, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and about your company?
Yeah, so thanks for having me here. I'm Joe. I've been in cybersecurity for over 20 years now. It's definitely a passion for me, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. I was that weird kid in junior high. What do you want to be when you grow up? And like, I want to run a network security company. Like, what's that? Mm-hmm. I grew up curious, and it evolved into a whole career for me. So opportunities came, and I grew up military and military intelligence, and around these guys that were like Captain America. They're the absolute tip of the spear in electronic warfare and cyber, and they were the guys parachuting into places and hacking into phone systems and stuff. It's where I got my first little 2600 Captain Crunch whistle from. So, these guys piqued my curiosity, and seeing the work that my dad did, I started just diving into technical books and, going after it. And now I'm at Infoblox. We're a big DNS security provider, and we are the best at it. We've been at it for about 30 years now. DNS is a pillar of security and infrastructure and everything else, and because of that, we have very unique visibility. So I'm able to hunt, and my team is able to hunt in a way that we're able to do a lot of good at scale and really solve very complex problems, and look where everyone is maybe afraid to look a little bit, because the whole phrase is it's always DNS, right?
Yeah, it's such a cliche now, right? It went from it's network, it's the firewall, but now it really is always DNS.
Yeah, it is. And DNS was traditionally looked at as just a networking protocol, and not as much security was focused on it. And some of that was just because it's a massive amount of data. Like, ingesting that much is impossible 20 years ago, or not even.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was there. I was looking at it, just the bandwidth needs and logging and disk space. It was
before we even had a SIM.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's definitely evolved, and Infoblox has evolved, and
they really have, because honestly, until about a year ago, I thought of them as like the IPAM, DHP, DNS, IP address management kind of company, but they've reinvented themselves. I don't even know when that happened, but
the DDI was their big bread and butter.
That's right.
And you don't when it happened. So 4 years ago, Dr. Renee Burton's my boss, who's former NSA, absolutely one of the most brilliant people.
You got to follow her on LinkedIn.
It's endless entertainment. Yeah, honestly, she is so energetic and just constantly giving. And it's her slogan is DNS all day, every day. Like, she means it. Like, she lives it. And our whole team does. It's incredible working with so many people that are passionate and curious, and just, our morning calls are. So what'd you get up to this weekend? Oh, I found something.
Yeah, that's pretty much how every security incident starts too. It's like, this doesn't look right, or I found something. Yeah, exactly. And then you investigate a bit more. Yeah. Yeah,
you trip over it, and then it's okay. This ends up being a career maker sometimes, where you just stumbled into something. So it's endless fun, man. We get to threat hunt for all sorts of things on the internet, and we get to make bad guys sad. And
well, tell me a bit about these, because I heard something about fake parking domains and
some of my colleagues are speaking at B-Sides right now on that. So we have been keeping track of a lot of these faked park domains where They look like a domain is for sale. And
so it isn't like parking; it's parks domains.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a hell of a lot more sense
real
to me.
park
Suddenly.
domain.
Okay,
So, or at
because
least
I was
looks like
seeing the
it.
pictures of people got fake QR codes on the sidewalk. They're getting paid. Okay, it has nothing to do with that. Okay, parks domains.
That is a
Now
fun attack vector.
Sense.
But yes, this one's different.
Yeah.
So these are park domains where they'll buy a domain and they park it. And what traditionally was happening for years is they were trying to monetize off those domains.
Yeah, squatting. Yep.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
rather than just squatting to make money off the domain, while it's sitting there, they wanted to make a little money. So they're like, well, let's run ads on the domain. And so anyone comes to it,
That's right. Yep.
it'll redirect you to something in that same topic. Well, that wasn't enough money for some people. And so they're like, well, how else can we get into this and make this something else? Maybe it's more than just a page that's sitting there. Maybe the right user from the right city and state with the right demographic. And so websites fingerprint you. They can know an obscene amount of information about you before you even come to them. And when
this is
you
an
get
interesting
there,
one as well, because I'm not sure everybody knows. Because since the dawn of time, what did we know? We knew your IP address, we knew your operating system, we knew your browser version. That was kind of
the basics.
The basics,
and even then, that gives you a lot of information.
Well,
I mean,
especially if you go to one site and then you go to another site.
Yeah.
Because that fingerprint it's not quite unique to you, but it's still can help separate one person from another.
and it gets there. As you spend more time on the internet, more companies are tracking your data, and they sell that. Data brokers sell your data all over the place. Or these sites just start tracking you right out the gate. So they know your screen resolution. So that tells you, is this person on a PC?
Because you got to know how to render the web page.
Yeah. And if the page comes to you and it says it's an iPhone, but the screen resolution is way bigger than an iPhone can support, well, I know that's not an iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I don't trust you. This is probably a bot or the IP address reputation. They could tell if you're coming from a data center or from
a VPN.
Yeah, a VPN or a Tor. You know, they could tell if you're coming from residential proxies, which is a whole nother can of worms. So they come into there and they fingerprint you and they identify who you are, and then they'll serve you a page based off of that, which kind of takes me into a discovery that we had made years ago were TDSs. So they're traffic distribution systems. So essentially what happens is a page will be either maliciously or entered into that hijack via ads. And they will send your traffic down what looks like a game of Plinko through websites where you see your browser redirect like 50 times. It's like, and what was that? Why did that go to so many different domains? And then it's a pop-up for an antivirus or something, or it's porn or gambling or, various other things that can show up. So you go and if you click on that and you actually say you purchase the antivirus, say you're gullible and you go and buy that antivirus. There were companies, Los Pollos is a good example of one where they were monetizing on traffic like this. So they were hijacking WordPress sites and redirecting traffic through them. So as you'd get redirected through them, they would collect the affiliate fees for sending you to buy that thing from every single one of those sites. So on a transaction for antivirus, say you spent $50 on that, they made $150 off of your transaction because they hijacked everyone's traffic and affiliate links for it and got paid the whole way. So it is brilliant organized crime. And it always all these huge things that we find and discover as they're bigger and bigger and bigger. And these networks, some of these websites, I mean, these aren't little, these are millions of websites, which that takes a substantial financial investment. You're talking millions of dollars in just getting ahead of this. And because of DNS and because of how we look at these problems, we can see that this site is evolving, that something is happening here, and we're able to predict what's going to happen so well that on average right now, before a 0-day hits, we're predicting it 68 days before that moment happens.
Oh, wow.
Because we can see them building up their defenses, just like when Russia invaded Ukraine. We knew that was going to happen because they were building their arms on the border for months and months and months. Personnel, weapons, armor, iron, everything was coming to the border. And we're like, they're going to do something. This doesn't look like just intimidation. And just like with these websites, we see them building this infrastructure and buying all these lookalike domains and various other aspects that look like they're going to fool and trick you. We see some of those ones where they're hacking WordPress sites and they're building up their arsenal of, bad stuff to attack you with. And some of those may look like bots. Some may look like spam cannons, and we'll identify that stuff and we'll be able to figure out what that is as we're sifting through the internet. Because like you said, we've been around a long time. DDR was our bread and butter. So, IP address management, DNS, DHCP. So we know where all the assets are, which is step number one, right? In your OSI model, the physical layer, right? So you want to know where all your assets are. We know where all the assets are. And then we know the DNS. So we know what everything is talking to. And when you're doing an attack, when you're a big nation state or script kiddie or whatever, people don't attack you with just an IP address anymore because that can be burnt really quickly. And then the IP address is burnt, then their connection's dead, their persistence is gone, they can't get in anymore. So they use URLs. So they'll buy a domain and they can use I know it came in the news, but it's a really old methodology called fastflux, where they're recycling that IP address every couple of seconds or minutes or, very quickly so that even if you try to do a takedown request, it was gone before you could even do anything about it. And that's the point. They're trying to hide what they're up to and look fishy, which to us is a huge red flag. To regular user that's not paying attention, you're not going to go and dig through that stuff. So no,
you probably wouldn't even notice.
No. So we do all that heavy lifting and, we're inspecting something like 50 billion domains a day or, I'm not sure that quote's right, but I'm pretty sure it was like 50 billion a day or it's obscene. But
honestly, the entire time you're talking about, I'm thinking about the significant amount of data and then the compute required to chew through and correlate that and spit it out into something actionable. This is
we've got fun clusters. Yeah. It is like a kid in a candy store for a computer nerd. Like the stuff that we have access to be able to make this all work and figure it out. And we train various machine learning and algorithms and stuff to hunt this. And this team's been, since Renee took over, it was 4 years in the making. So our threat intelligence team, we were an aggregator at one point. So we took a lot of other people's sources together and then we do those alerts. The problem is when you do that, you have to own their failures too and their false positives. So we're like, we need to get our false positive rate up because we want our customers to be really happy with us and really trust us. So that was their whole design. I've been here about 2 years, so I've been here for half of this. And it's incredible what we're doing. I came traditionally firewall and antivirus companies where we were fighting after, you try and block the attack from coming in, but then you're fighting after the fact. DNS, it's the opposite. You're hunting forward. You're going after this stuff before it happens, and you're buying people. One of the most valuable things you can is time. So you have time to stop these threats. You have time to get yourself ready for the invasion or, block everything before anything happens. And then it just fizzles out like a dud. And their whole, that's so good. When you're able to stop these huge attacks.
I'll admit some of my earliest successes, I took great delight when they relied on resolution of host names. Flipping the host name to resolve in my network to 127.0.0.1 was one of the things that brought me pleasure. Because if they're going to rely on host names and not IPs, I'm going to use that to my advantage. Because, man, as the blue teamers and things, we're always at a disadvantage, and we're always having to respond after the fact. That's why when you're telling me you've got 68 days ahead of things, I would love to have that. I also don't need another stream of garbage coming in because it's just wasting valuable humans. And I'm looking forward to if AI can finally get us to the point where we're only looking at the true positives, that would be fantastic. That would be transformational for me and the team.
And weighing in what everything is too. Because there are a lot of, you could do a vulnerability scanner on your outside and you could see, you're vulnerable to all these CVEs. Okay. But which ones really matter? So am I vulnerable to a bunch of Windows NT stuff? That doesn't matter anymore because I'm not running Windows NT, so I don't need to worry about those CVEs.
But you are running Windows 2008 Server R2, man.
Yeah, right? Someone's, yes.
They're still doing it.
Boy, I don't know if you've worked with hospitals, but so many of them are
XP.
on SMBV1.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Still running through a network after 30 years of them saying that it's bad, stop using this. There are still software providers that will run that in their packages, and like honestly, at this point, it's just like maybe we need to find a different provider if you can't upgrade your gear, because this is just pure negligence at this point. 'Cause 30 years of people saying stop using this, upgrade, move off of it, and they'll still.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll run into software in companies that are stacked, just 30 years of junk that started on serial and is moving up, moving up the chain, and now it's on TCP and it's not bothering to frame its packets correctly, and it's making a bunch of noise and racket. No one really noticed it was a problem, until you have an event where all of a sudden you have to scan in thousands of images at once when normally you're doing one or two a day, and all of a sudden, because you're drinking from the fire hose, all these little problems you never noticed are lighting fires all over your building. So, it's definitely fun watching the whole industry evolve and being in this space. I was at a company called Nile before, and we solved a really critical problem in zero trust that, every company's saying that they do real zero trust and we'll get you there and this and that. And I'm like, well, what about that little guy? And like, I wouldn't worry about that little guy. I'm like, no, I'm worried. What about the broadcast domain on the network? That's inherently trusted to talk to, depending on the network size. It could be 2 hosts, or it could be hundreds of thousands of them, or millions of hosts that it's able to laterally move. And some networks, I've seen people's networks that are 10.0.0/8.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just anyone can, whatever IP you want. That doesn't work, just ping it. Does that respond? Nope. Okay, yeah, assign that IP. And,
oh man.
Or worse, like old schools or buildings where they use public IP addresses on all their internal, and they're not really following 1918. Like, it's, as a network engineer. That was
the story at BC government. Everybody had a routable internet-facing IP address.
Remember that when we had a limited IP?
Perhaps it was the case when I showed up that they didn't even have firewalls on the perimeter. But also, when they first did the addressing, that wasn't really a thing. So this is crazy. I guess
take you back.
That makes me think about the fact that all of this new evolution and transformation, innovation that's going on is still leveraging the same old network that we've had since day one. Though we moved from IPv4 to V6, what inherent security controls or benefits did that give us? Not very damn much.
None, if not more complexity.
Yeah.
Because everything is so big now, you're not mathematically separating where something is on a network on an IPv6 address.
I just remember 340 undecillion addresses, one for every atom on the face of this earth, and 100 more like it. That's staggering, right?
Plenty.
When one network in V6 is the size of all of V4 combined, it's safe. Like, I would like to believe that means we're not going to run out of addresses, but we also haven't moved off of V4. So it's like,
right. And they've been saying that since I got my first Cisco cert in the early 2000s. Yeah. We're going to run out of IP space.
Well, we did run out. That was
and because people got to give up all those public addresses they were using. But as a network engineer, I'm coming through with my certs and my standards and my TISMs, and I'm just like, this is very specific. You need to not do this on your LAN, and I inherited this.
I ask companies this, or even my students when I was teaching, I'd ask them, guys, if you have a company with 30,000 employees and you're not hosting any servers, how many IP addresses do you need? Like one.
Yeah.
But of course, as you say, everybody's holding on to these, /24s on up.
Well, we got a little smarter, for the most part. We started building walled gardens, and the network was a firewall at the front, and you had your switching and routing and everything below that, and you tried to keep everything in that cage. Well, now with cloud, everything is right back out in the open again, so we've got to change how we do some things. And a lot of that, because you're not in that walled garden, we've had to rethink of how you authenticate and how you act with things. And when you're out in the open and you're not behind the corporate firewalls and you're on your laptop, what's keeping an eye on you? We have, with what we do, we have agents that will run a really light one that sits on your machine, and it will monitor all the DNS coming in and out of there. So and block stuff.
That's what I was going to ask. Are we talking detect, or are we talking prevent? Or are we talking
both?
Yeah.
So we detect, prevent, all of it. And then as that goes through the system and it crosses the threshold, if we haven't scanned that before, our system will automatically start looking into it. What is this? What's this URL? going on here? What are they up to? And they'll try and figure it out. When was this registered? What name server is it using? What registrar is it coming through? Where is it hosted? Is this distributed? Is it behind a CDN that's, unscrupulous and doesn't do KYC and allows anybody to get on there and hide their wares behind it? There's some providers out there right now that it's almost every single day, a issue flares up and it ends up right behind this network, and we're trying to stop it, and it's like, okay, like how many times does this always have to be in the way before, and some companies want to remain like Switzerland and not, get in the way of it. But at some point, like social media companies, network companies have to own a little bit of what's on their network and be like, I'm not going to host this fraud. And, just because the government may say it's okay and I'm charging them more, maybe I should have some ethics and scruples and shut that down.
That's always been a tricky one, right?
Yeah.
The ISPs were always traffic agnostic until we found one of the things that we can all agree on that's inappropriate is CSAM, right?
Yeah.
And getting rid of that. And now suddenly we can, lower some of the competition to just do the right thing. But it is tricky because I've been in this position before. I used to work at a very large telco and internet provider. And as soon as you start saying what traffic is allowed and what's not, now you're effectively affecting free speech, right? So it's really tricky. So, but I also have investigated a few very recently with traffic and DNS and things, and it's like the more they've obfuscated it, the more obviously like it goes from suspicious to very suspected. Malicious,
blatant.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you don't need to obfuscate on top of obfuscation on top of like you're clearly not doing anything legit there.
Yeah. And if they're lookalike domains for legitimate brands that are clearly violating, trademarks and copyrights and patents and everything else, that gives you some good, easy legal ground to go and get takedowns done. Which is something we do as well. We go and
I was
do
interested in that
service.
because I have heard some people expressing that they've had difficulty doing this, and I was shocked at that because my reputation, my batting average on that is pretty high.
Yeah.
But I don't just submit a ticket to the abuse and call it a day.
You reach out to someone at that company.
Yeah, that might be the first
LinkedIn.
Step. Well, I think you've got 3 or 4 different options, right?
Yeah.
The owner of the network, you got the owner of the registrar, whoever's hosting the website, if there is one, and whoever's hosting the DNS.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and sometimes the problem, like bulletproof hosting, is a big issue where, sometimes they won't do a takedown, or they're in a country that like, we're not getting involved at all with any of this. And it's like, you're hosting really bad stuff right there. And eventually, sometimes even those countries end up getting raided by their own police or something where something is bad and egregious enough they have to go after it. So there's definitely a balance there, and it sucks having to toe that rope because especially as a hunter, like I'm walking around with my hammer and everything's looking like a nail.
Yeah.
Like I'm just
well, and you're finding stuff. Some of it's, could be benign or not that bad. Then you're finding stuff that's really bad. Now, I bet you feel like I do, an onus to like obligation to report that and tell people
tons.
And you have to reach somebody who understands what you're saying and understands the level of risk, so
You
they
do.
might be inclined to do something about it. Right?
And it helps out having relationships, and that's part of why we're able to do things like that successfully, because we've been doing DNS for so long. And like literally Cricket, he works for us, he wrote like the book on it, on Bind.
That's what I was thinking, right? When you said that was around Bind.
Yeah. Cricket's on the cover, man. It's literally. So it's, we've been doing it a long time. There's a lot of relationships and trust that's built there of, hey, I know these researchers are doing, due diligence when they're going to bother to send us something. And we have a lot of relationships that are super helpful. Like, honestly, collaborate. Security is never going to be solved by one person or one company. And I don't care how many panes of glass they sold you. It's still not going to solve every problem. They have to work well in an ecosystem and with everyone else, with resellers, with customers, with competitors. We work with some competitors sometimes threat hunting, and we know dang well they are a competitor, but we don't care because we're trying to make the internet better.
Absolutely. What's ringing in my mind right now is Dave Gemma, the CEO of CISO Global, always talks about frenemies, because we're all in this industry together and we need to cooperate in order to make it a safer place. And it's a daily challenge. I mean, I'm looking every day at the list of ransomware victims and my heart goes out to them. But what are we doing to put a dent in this problem and make it so that, thieves can't, victimize people like this?
Yeah, pig butchering operations are a big problem too. And our teams have been going after them relentlessly. And
I've seen stories that are being posted out there, and that is like truly horrible. And it's, I don't know how many of them are actually happening domestically here, but the international ones and the folks that are trying to bring additional light and make it more
shining
well-known.
light in dark places.
That's right.
Yep.
And I bet that the average person looks at that and doesn't even fully comprehend or just wants to believe that it's not true.
Or the risk these people take just reporting it. Like, these are cartels. These are criminal organizations.
Maybe we should explain
some
a
of them
little
are
bit about
violent.
what this is. But I saw some of these articles recently, and I just couldn't believe that there's folks that are going overseas, as you say, taking big risk. Like, they'll just disappear in that country.
Yeah.
They'll just be a statistic.
Or they'll end up in one of those call centers.
Yeah, absolutely. And suddenly somebody who was drawn there who was desperate and needed a job now is doing something completely different than what they were.
A lot of time that's how they get them.
Yeah.
They recruit them with a fake job offer. They say, oh, come and work in this call center. We're going to come out of, Cambodia or Myanmar or wherever they're pulling this
And
place.
now it's suddenly you're going to scam 50 seniors a day, or your family is going to suffer.
And you're in a city that apparently is owned entirely by the gang. Like, the whole place, the whole facade, the skyscrapers, everything. They own all of it. This is almost like sharecropping, or how the old mines used to work, where they owned the town and the mine store and the mine hospital, and you got sucked into paying everything through the company you worked for, and you never got out of that ecosystem or escape. But even worse, you weren't allowed to, or they'd kill you or your family or something else. So, like, some of these, there's one of the big whistleblowers of that will be coming to RSA, actually. One of the big ones, that I think it was Burma or maybe Myanmar, but there's a whole city that he whistleblew on. Essentially, he was a scammer in a call center, got a job offer, and moved out there and couldn't leave. And he risked, life and limb literally to get that to happen. And we need cooperation.
There you go. I think
Old
you've coined
Novell
a couple
exec.
of new terms here as well.
Oh, that one's not mine. I wish I could own that.
That was when you short threat and hunting.
Trunting, yeah. Yeah, so that's an old Novell exec, cooperation. So, we've all got to work together to make this better, and go after these problems. And I don't want to get on the internet and worry if my TV is, hacking me and letting someone spy in my home, or, if my vacuum is using the same.
No, that doesn't happen, man. That doesn't happen.
As everyone else
Roomba is safe.
I put stuff like that. So everyone's like, you have all the smart gear in your house. Why aren't you worried about that? Yeah. I know all of this stuff is, broken or is going to be broken. That's why
it's
I have
also
it here.
neatly segregated on another VLAN.
You're dang right it is.
Yeah.
It's in all of its own different separate VLANs based on the risk. If it's got an ESP32 chip in it, that thing is going to be like on a heat lamp. Like, I'm watching you, and you don't get to talk to anything else. So yeah, my networks are ridiculous at my house, and my kids, they're like, we can't get away with anything. Like, one of our teenagers tried to sneak out once, and they're like doing this up against the wall, and I was like, come here, come look at this camera, come see how dumb you look.
Adjust your angle
this
better.
This is called a fisheye lens.
It's a little broader,
so I can see you.
That was the conversation I had with my kids as well. Was packets in and out of this house are monitored.
Yep.
Encryption is a mild inconvenience.
Yeah, and when you work in a corporate environment, it's the same thing. So, behave and keep the rules a little bit, but also be safe. I'm trying to, my goal is protect my kids and my family and my company. And I've always, I grew up military, so I have that role as a protector, and I want to
lead by example as well.
Yeah.
So with these companies, I am always surprised, because in my career, obviously, I've had to deal with a lot of HR investigations and see the kinds of things that people will try to get away with at work. And I think none so clearly punctuates it as much as when the Ashley Madison thing hit.
Oh, that was great.
And I'm looking at folks and I'm like, but what I don't understand is, why did you use your work email? They're like, oh, I can't use my home one or my wife will find out. I'm like, have you heard of Hotmail?
Yeah, they're not thinking with their brain.
It's like I thought we'd get even more commentary on that particular one. Obviously, there's a Netflix special. I think I've yet to watch it, but
Yeah.
when that whole thing
I
was because people. I think there was a lot of very interesting things that happened around that.
Oh,
and
yeah.
one of them
People
was
died over that.
Absolutely, because they're getting extorted and things. But when it was like guilty until proven innocent, they didn't validate any of the emails that were sent. Like very prominent people were in there, and I have no reason to believe that they actually signed up.
Yeah.
But they're in there.
Maybe,
because,
maybe not.
Yeah, who knows? But anyways, that's an older one that I thought was a bit fascinating. And I don't know, they're probably still around. I thought that would be the end of
They
them.
are,
as soon
yeah,
as you
yeah.
find
Their
out
CISO's pretty cool. He's got a good podcast too.
Okay,
Yeah.
I haven't checked
Yeah,
that out.
I'll have to introduce you
Yep.
into those
That'd
guys.
be awesome.
Yeah, they've got
because
some cool
that
stuff.
was a very interesting story when it came out, and it was breaking when I was at government, and
it's wild. And just for a study on social, like right now we have problems where they're trying to KYC is getting a little strong in some areas, and they want to verify that you have your driver's license to go to websites on the internet. And I'm like, no. Like Discord is trying to force that right now, and they already got popped.
Yeah.
Like what was it, 2 days, 3 days, and they were already breached. Like that, and they're canceling their contracts with Palantir for the Persona product that they had because that got all popped. And I'm just like, yeah, no kidding, that happened. Like I grew up with this mentality that essentially the hacker is always going to win. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
Like,
I
you
really
could try
do
and
think
stop
that that's
them,
a
but then
main
what?
thing right now. So we kind of transitioned to this slowly. We said it's not enough to prevent. No organization globally is immune to attack. It's not enough to prevent.
Yeah.
You got to be
I mean,
ready
we
to
tried. We
detect
absolutely
and
should
respond.
try.
Yeah, don't abandon it.
Yeah.
Don't just accept
Make it hard for
blindly.
them. Make them work for it.
Make it expensive. And I'm not talking about money, right? But you got to be prepared to detect and respond. So are you going to have that visibility to jump on something when it does happen, and how quickly? Because seconds and minutes matter here.
Yep. Time is that differentiator, and it's something we're targeting. It's that 68-day thing. We're trying to get that up. I want that to be way higher, and but that's also like we have a false positive rate of 0.002%.
That's pretty
ridiculous.
amazing.
So that a lot of that was grind. I mean, the people I work with are absolutely brilliant, and they're constantly trying to think of, even when something's good, they're like, awesome. All right, what else can we do to make this a little bit better?
I
more
can't even
tuned?
fathom that with the quantity of the volume of information that you're working with and trying to get false positive rates at that level. That's kind of incredible.
That's reported by our customers too. So they go in and they open up tickets and like, hey, this domain. And honestly, like we have a lot of customers that are really invested in this too. They love getting on their console and figuring out and finding stuff and alerting us if something's weird.
I'm curious. So what does this look like for the end client that's using these products and services? Is it simply just an IP or host name domain lookup, or how is it deployed in a company environment?
So we have agents that'll run on machines. And then, so as you know, not everything can have an agent installed on it. You can't get EDR on a printer, stuff
Not
like
yet.
that. And this is an EDR too, but I'm using it as an example. So, you have visibility. We have NIOS devices that monitor your network. They do the DHCP management, and they'll do DNS forwarding to secure DNS. So the app will loop through your laptop or computer, and it will forward all that information back and forth to our cloud resolvers. And we will hold into that information into your own private stores. And then all of that data is organized in what's called RPZs. So the category of URLs and and the domains in there that are problematic can be weighed heavier or lighter than others, depending on how you, just like on a firewall. Yeah, exactly. Just like on an old firewall, when you select like content filtering, you're filtering all these different, adult content, whatever, and any domains that fit within that space, they get weighted and based on how much of a threat they are. And we can't, boil the ocean. So we don't have every single domain on the internet in our store. We don't know what every single thing is, but we know what since we're in like 92 of the Fortune 100s and 80% of the Fortune 500s, our data set is huge. And we have really rich enterprise government data. So we know what part of the internet is typically active in business and personal. And like, we don't have to pay attention as much to the personal internet and stuff that people do, at home or whatever. We can focus on all this other stuff. So we have a really rich data set in that sense. And we're able to utilize that to keep an eye on things inside of your network and your business better and stronger. And since we have those other devices that capture all the traffic and from every other device on your network, we know DNS coming to and from everything. So we can see, and it gives us multiple points to stop the connection too. So the initial queries and the responses, we're looking at the response traffic too. That's something key to differentiate. Most DNS security providers are not looking at the responses. So that data sometimes is really important, especially for some of those really malicious TDS providers or some other attackers that in those response packets are using DNS text messages essentially to send malicious data through that tunnel.
Yeah, this feels like right out of my career.
Routing tables through the, I mean, we've seen them sending all sorts
just
of weird
trickling
data.
it out. And it basically makes it look like when you're looking for this thing, it's like finding a needle in a stack of needles. You have to be like
daunting,
just very lucky, win the lottery in order to see the badness.
Yeah. And honestly, like Dave Mitchell and Renee Burton, like really got me into like, I mean, I knew DNS and security and threat hunting and all that before, but like in hunting TDSs with those two, like it never ends. Like it's constantly satisfying just going after this stuff and finding it and discovering it. And it's a new puzzle. It's like getting a new Rubik's Cube and just, oh man, like look at all these.
Well, it's never ending too, right?
Yeah, it never ends. Yeah, it's constant. So it's fun. We get to make a big difference and, we make a lot of bad guys sad and some of them get really mad at us and, sorry, but you're doing bad stuff on the internet. I'm not going to let you onto my network. Like it.
That's fair.
Or my customers. Yeah. So yeah, we're looking out as hard as we can, but it's fun, man. I get to work in security and we get to threat hunt. Like this is, I mean, other than being a fighter pilot, this is one of the coolest jobs in the world.
I completely agree. And I think that's our time for today. I'd love to honestly be here for another hour picking your brain on different things. But for now, I'm going to thank you, Joseph, for what you do and the job of Infoblox. And I'd like to thank NextSpace here for providing this fantastic facility, as well as Jeff and the audiovisual team. Big round of applause for them, but also all of the viewers. If you learn anything here, please stay vigilant out there. It's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to be victimized. You can still do something about it. Please stay safe out there.